Most people have experienced this at least once. You walk into your bathroom late at night, switch on the light, and there it is. A small earwig sitting quietly near the sink, hiding beside the bathtub, or moving across the floor as if it has always belonged there. The strange thing is that you may not have seen a single one for months, and then suddenly they seem to appear out of nowhere. But they are not appearing by accident. In fact, long before your bathroom existed, earwigs were already searching for places that looked surprisingly similar. What if that cool tile floor, the damp air after a shower, and the tiny dark spaces around your home are creating the perfect environment for a creature that most people barely understand? And the deeper you look, the stranger the story becomes. Because an earwig's nightly journey often begins far outside your house, following hidden paths that remain completely invisible during the day. Even more surprising is what these insects are actually doing while the rest of the world sleeps. Their lives are filled with behaviors that few people ever witness, and one of those behaviors changes the way scientists think about these tiny creatures altogether. By the end of this video, you may never look at your bathroom in quite the same way again. And if the natural world has ever made you stop and wonder what is happening just beyond the edge of your attention, subscribe, because some of nature's most fascinating secrets are hiding in places we see every single day. If you have ever found an earwig in your bathroom, there is a good chance the encounter happened at a very specific time. Not in the middle of a busy afternoon, not while sunlight was pouring through the window. Usually it happens late at night or early in the morning. You walk in, turn on the light, and for a brief moment you catch a glimpse of a small creature that seems completely out of place. Then, almost immediately, it disappears into a crack, beneath a cabinet, behind a toilet, or under a bath mat. The encounter lasts only seconds, yet it leaves a strange impression. Where did it come from? How long had it been there? And perhaps the biggest question of all, why the bathroom? Most people assume an earwig has somehow wandered indoors by mistake. It seems like a reasonable explanation. After all, houses are full of accidental visitors. A moth flies through an open door. A spider finds its way through a gap in a window frame. A beetle gets lost and ends up in a room where it clearly does not belong. But earwigs tell a slightly different story. They are not simply wandering at random. In many cases, they are actively searching for exactly the kind of conditions a bathroom provides. To understand why, it helps to imagine the world from an earwig's perspective. During the day, an earwig lives a surprisingly cautious life. Unlike butterflies basking in sunlight or bees moving openly between flowers, earwigs prefer shadows. They avoid dry air. They avoid direct sun. They avoid exposure whenever possible. If you were to search for them outdoors, you would probably not find them crawling across open ground. Instead, you would discover them hidden beneath stones, tucked inside rotting wood, sheltered under piles of leaves, or resting in tiny damp spaces where the air remains cool and moist. These places are more than hiding spots. They are essential shelters. An earwig's body loses moisture easily, and staying hidden helps prevent dehydration. This simple need shapes almost every part of its daily routine, and that is where the story begins to connect with your bathroom. Think about what happens after a hot shower. Steam fills the room. Tiny droplets settle onto surfaces. Moisture lingers in corners long after the water has stopped running. The air becomes cooler and heavier. To us, it is simply a bathroom returning to normal. But to a small creature searching for humidity and protection, the room starts to resemble something else entirely. It begins to resemble the underside of a log after rain. It begins to resemble damp soil beneath a stone. It begins to resemble one of the safe places earwigs have been seeking for millions of years. Suddenly, the bathroom does not seem like such an unusual destination, but there is another detail that makes this even more interesting. Most people imagine their homes as sealed environments. We lock doors, we close windows, we build walls. Yet countless tiny openings connect the indoors and outdoors. Small gaps beneath doors, cracks around pipes, openings near foundations, tiny spaces around vents. To us, these spaces are almost invisible. To an earwig, they can be highways. Every night, when the world becomes cooler and darker, earwigs begin to move. They leave their daytime shelters and start exploring. They search for food, they search for moisture, they search for better hiding places. And during these nighttime journeys, some eventually discover the hidden entrances leading into human homes. The strange part is that most homeowners never witness this process. By the time people wake up, the travelers have already reached their destinations. The journey happens entirely in darkness. While entire neighborhoods sleep, countless small creatures are quietly moving through gardens, along walls, beneath fences, and across patios. An earwig crossing a backyard may cover only a short distance, but from its perspective, it is navigating a vast landscape filled with dangers and opportunities. A patch of grass becomes a forest, a flower bed becomes a valley, a narrow crack along a wall becomes a protected passageway, and somewhere along that route, a bathroom may offer exactly what it needs. Yet even this is only part of the explanation, because moisture alone does not fully account for why earwigs seem to appear so suddenly. There is another hidden factor at work, one that most people never think about when they spot an earwig beside a sink or bathtub. The answer lies not just in the room itself, but in the remarkable way these insects spend their nights exploring the world around them. And once you understand how they move, the mystery of their sudden appearance becomes even more fascinating. What makes earwigs especially fascinating is that they experience the world very differently from us. Humans rely heavily on sight. We walk into a room and instantly understand where we are. An earwig does something completely different. Most of its decisions are guided by touch, moisture, temperature, and subtle chemical signals that drift through the environment. What appears to us as an ordinary bathroom may feel like a landscape full of information. Every damp corner tells a story. Every crack beneath a cabinet offers potential shelter. Every change in humidity helps the insect decide where to move next. This is why earwigs often seem surprisingly confident once they enter a building. They are not wandering blindly. They are constantly reading the environment around them. Their long antennae sweep back and forth, collecting information from surfaces and the air. In many ways, those antennae function like highly sensitive navigation tools. Long before an earwig reaches your bathroom, it may already be following a trail of conditions that suggest safety lies ahead. And safety is something these insects take very seriously. Earwigs spend much of their lives trying to avoid becoming someone else's meal. Birds eat them, frogs eat them, lizards eat them, small mammals eat them. Even other insects can be dangerous. Because of this, survival often depends on finding the right shelter before daylight arrives. As dawn approaches, an earwig's priorities begin to change. The search for food becomes less important. The search for protection becomes everything. This creates an interesting pattern that many people never notice. Earwigs often appear indoors after periods of rain. At first, this seems strange. You might expect them to remain outside where conditions are already moist. But heavy rain can flood their normal hiding places. Spaces beneath rocks fill with water. Soil becomes saturated. Leaf litter becomes unstable. Suddenly, thousands of tiny shelters become less comfortable than they were before. In response, earwigs start exploring. Some move only a short distance. Others travel much farther than people would expect. And during these journeys, they sometimes encounter houses that offer something surprisingly valuable: stability. Inside a building, temperatures change more slowly. Humidity can remain consistent. Protected spaces stay dry when the outside world becomes chaotic. From an earwig's perspective, this can make certain parts of a home feel unusually attractive. But there is another detail that most people never connect to earwig activity. Many bathrooms contain hidden moisture that humans rarely notice. A tiny leak beneath a sink, condensation around pipes, dampness trapped behind a toilet, moisture gathering inside wall cavities. To us, these areas are invisible. We see only the finished room. Earwigs, however, are often discovering the conditions hidden behind surfaces. Some may spend hours exploring spaces that people never realize exist: behind baseboards, beneath flooring, inside narrow gaps around plumbing. Entire networks of miniature passages can exist within a home, creating routes that insects use without ever entering the open room. This explains one of the strangest parts of the earwig mystery. Sometimes a person finds an earwig in the bathroom, removes it, and then finds another one days later. It feels as though they are appearing from nowhere. In reality, the visible insect may represent only a tiny fraction of the movement happening behind walls and beneath floors. Most of the activity remains completely hidden. Yet earwigs are not simply searching for moisture and shelter. They are also looking for food. And this is where the story becomes even more interesting. Despite their somewhat intimidating appearance, Earwigs are surprisingly useful members of many ecosystems. They eat decaying plant material. They consume algae. They feed on soft-bodied insects and insect eggs. In gardens, they often help clean up organic matter that would otherwise accumulate. They are part scavenger, part hunter, and part recycler. Their role is far more complex than most people realize. In fact, many people who dislike earwigs have no idea that these insects spend much of their lives performing quiet ecological work that benefits the environments around them. Yet perhaps the most misunderstood feature of all is the pair of curved pincers at the end of their bodies. For centuries, these pincers helped create myths. Some old stories claimed earwigs crawled into people's ears while they slept. Others imagined them as aggressive little creatures searching for trouble. The truth is much less dramatic and far more interesting. Those pincers are mainly tools. Earwigs use them during courtship, for defense, and even for folding their wings. And yes, earwigs have wings. This surprises many people because they rarely see them fly. Hidden beneath short protective covers is a remarkable set of folded wings packed into an incredibly small space. Scientists have long been fascinated by the way earwigs fold these wings. The structure is so efficient that engineers have even studied it for inspiration in designing collapsible technologies. Most people see only a small insect on a bathroom floor. They never realize they are looking at a creature carrying one of nature's most elegant folding systems. But even that is not the most unexpected thing about earwigs, because beneath their quiet appearance lies a behavior that feels surprisingly unusual in the insect world. A behavior that reveals a level of care and attention few people would ever expect from a creature they find hiding beside a sink. And once you discover what earwig mothers do for their young, these insects begin to look very different indeed. When most people think about insects, they rarely imagine anything that resembles parenting. The common image is simple. An insect lays eggs, disappears, and the next generation survives on its own. For many species, that is exactly what happens. But earwigs are different. Hidden beneath leaves, inside soil, beneath stones, and sometimes surprisingly close to human homes, earwig mothers perform one of the most unusual behaviors found among insects. After laying her eggs, a female earwig does not simply leave. She stays. She guards them. She cleans them. She protects them from danger. Scientists observing earwig nests have watched mothers carefully move eggs from one location to another when conditions become unfavorable. If moisture levels change or temperatures shift, she may relocate the entire group to a safer place. This level of attention seems almost unexpected from a creature many people notice only for a few seconds on a bathroom floor. Yet for the developing young, that care can mean the difference between life and death. Imagine a small underground chamber hidden beneath damp soil. Inside rests a cluster of pale eggs. Nearby, the mother waits patiently. She may spend weeks protecting them. During this period, she often reduces her own feeding activities. Her focus remains on the future generation. Long before humans notice earwigs inside their homes, countless scenes like this are unfolding quietly outdoors. Entire family stories are taking place beneath our feet without attracting the slightest attention. And when the young finally hatch, another fascinating chapter begins. Tiny earwigs emerge, looking like miniature versions of the adults. They gather around their mother and continue receiving protection during their earliest days. This is one reason scientists have become increasingly interested in earwig behavior. The insect does not fit many of the assumptions people traditionally make about small invertebrates. It reveals that even creatures living in the shadows can possess surprisingly complex behaviors. But maternal care is only one hidden side of the earwig story. There is another aspect that becomes visible only when darkness falls. During the day, earwigs often appear slow and secretive. At night, however, an entirely different world emerges. As temperatures cool and predators become less active, earwigs leave their shelters and begin exploring. A garden that seems completely still to human eyes can become filled with movement. Earwigs navigate through vegetation, across stones, beneath flowers, and along fences. They investigate scents carried by the air. They search for food. They encounter rivals. They avoid hunters. In many ways, a backyard after midnight resembles a bustling city inhabited by creatures that most people never see. This hidden activity is one reason earwigs can appear so mysterious. Their lives occur almost entirely outside normal human schedules. We experience the world during the day. They experience much of it at night. As a result, entire chapters of their existence unfold while we sleep. Yet perhaps the most surprising discovery comes when scientists examine how adaptable earwigs can be. These insects have survived for an incredibly long time. Their ancestors existed alongside ecosystems that looked very different from today's world. Over countless generations, they developed strategies for finding shelter, locating moisture, avoiding predators, and exploiting opportunities wherever they appeared. This adaptability helps explain why they can thrive in gardens, forests, fields, parks, and occasionally inside human structures. To an earwig, a house is not necessarily a house. It is a collection of conditions: darkness, moisture, narrow spaces, stable temperatures. The insect does not understand walls and rooms the way humans do. It responds to environmental signals. Wherever those signals point, it follows. And this brings us to one of the strangest things researchers have learned about life in general. Many animals are constantly making decisions based on environmental clues that humans barely perceive. Tiny changes in humidity, subtle differences in temperature, invisible chemical traces, airflow patterns moving through cracks and openings. What appears random from our perspective may actually be the result of countless biological calculations occurring every second. Earwigs are part of that hidden system. Their movements may seem unpredictable, but often they are responding to information embedded within the environment itself, information that our senses simply overlook. The more scientists study small creatures, the more they discover that nature is filled with invisible conversations. Plants release chemical signals, insects detect microscopic traces, fungi exchange information through underground networks, predators search for clues left by prey, prey search for clues left by predators. Every landscape contains layers of communication operating beyond ordinary human awareness. Earwigs participate in this world every day, and when one appears beside a sink or bathtub, we are witnessing only the final moment of a much longer story. A story that may have started hours earlier in a garden, beneath a flower pot, under a pile of leaves, or inside a crack hidden along a foundation wall. Yet there is one final realization that makes the entire mystery even more fascinating, because the real story is not only about earwigs, it is about what their presence reveals regarding the unseen world surrounding every home, a world far larger, busier, and more alive than most people ever imagine. And once you begin looking at your surroundings through that lens, even the smallest encounter can feel completely different. The next time you walk into your bathroom and notice an earwig sitting quietly near the wall, it may be worth pausing for a moment before looking away. Not because the insect is dangerous, not because something unusual is happening inside your home, but because that tiny encounter represents a much larger story than most people realize. Somewhere outside, perhaps only a few hours earlier, that earwig was moving through a completely different world. It may have emerged from beneath a stone warmed by the afternoon sun. It may have traveled through damp soil after rainfall. It may have followed invisible gradients of moisture across a garden, beneath a fence, and along the edge of a building. The journey was silent, unnoticed, entirely hidden from human awareness, yet it happened all the same. This is one of the most fascinating things about nature. So much of life continues whether we observe it or not. We often imagine that the visible world is the complete world. We see trees, birds, clouds, flowers, and familiar animals. But beneath that visible layer exists another reality filled with movement, decisions, risks, and survival stories unfolding every minute of every day. A patch of soil contains entire communities. A pile of leaves shelters countless lives. A fallen branch becomes an ecosystem. Even the narrow gap beneath a garden stone may hold creatures engaged in activities more complex than we would ever expect. Earwigs are only one small part of that hidden network, yet they offer a surprisingly good reminder of how much remains unseen. Consider how many creatures may live within a short distance of your home right now. Spiders waiting patiently in dark corners, beetles moving through the soil, moths resting beneath leaves, tiny predators searching for prey, tiny scavengers recycling dead plant material, countless interactions occurring simultaneously. Most of them happen quietly enough that human senses never register them. We walk past entire worlds every day without realizing they exist. And perhaps that is why encounters with creatures like earwigs feel so strangely memorable. For a brief moment, the hidden world becomes visible. something crosses the boundary between its environment and ours. We catch a glimpse of a life operating according to completely different rules, a life shaped by moisture, darkness, temperature, scent, and instinct, a life that has been evolving for millions of years. Suddenly, the insect is no longer just an insect, it becomes evidence of an enormous living system surrounding us at all times. Modern homes can sometimes create the illusion that we are separate from nature. Walls divide us from the outdoors. Windows create barriers. Artificial lighting extends our days beyond sunset. Climate control allows us to ignore weather that once shaped daily life. Yet, despite all of these comforts, nature remains remarkably close. Tiny openings connect indoor and outdoor environments. Air flows through hidden spaces. Moisture moves through materials. Plants grow around foundations. Insects explore boundaries. The separation is never quite as complete as it appears. In many ways, every house exists within a larger ecosystem rather than outside it. Earwigs remind us of that reality. They reveal how even carefully constructed human spaces remain connected to natural processes occurring beyond our awareness. And perhaps the most remarkable part is that none of this requires distant wilderness or exotic locations. We often associate fascinating wildlife with rainforests, remote mountains, or unexplored regions. Yet some of the most interesting stories are unfolding right outside ordinary homes. Beneath flower pots, under decks, along garden paths, around drains and foundations. Entire dramas of survival are taking place in spaces we pass every day without a second thought. The difference is not the presence of nature. The difference is whether we notice it. Once curiosity begins to grow, familiar places start looking different. A damp corner becomes potential habitat. A patch of leaves becomes shelter. A crack along a wall becomes a travel route. The ordinary becomes layered with hidden meaning. This shift in perspective may be the most valuable thing creatures like earwigs can offer. They encourage us to look a little closer, to become aware of the countless lives moving quietly around us, to appreciate that the world is far more active, interconnected, and alive than it first appears. So if an earwig appears in your bathroom one evening, you might still decide to gently move it back outside. Most people probably will. But perhaps you will also remember that you are looking at a traveler from a hidden world, a small explorer following ancient instincts through a landscape it understands in ways we never could. A creature searching for moisture, shelter, and survival in the same way its ancestors have done for countless generations. And while it may seem insignificant at first glance, its presence tells a much larger story. A story about the invisible connections between homes and nature. About the lives unfolding after dark while we sleep. About the ecosystems thriving just beyond our attention. And about the simple truth that the world around us is never as empty as it seems. Even in the quietest room of the house, life is often much closer than we think.